Recording in
Courtney.
progress.
Thank you. All right, I see Courtney. Hi, Court.
Good morning. Sorry, I had to change computers and I had to use a different login instead of just clicking on a link.
All right, here we go. Good evening and welcome to the February 1st meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference and is also being broadcast on cable channel 15 and streamed online by FCTV. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be cognizant of what you say, how you say it, and what can be seen and heard in your background. I'd like to thank our staff for their continued support to this commission and their diligence assisting applicants. We are missing two commissioners tonight, Melissa and Steve. However, we have a quorum. We're moving forward. I'd like to remind the commissioners that for commenting, I'll be calling each of you at the appropriate time. Try to refrain from speaking over each other. Also, all votes need to be done by roll call. When I call your name, please state your name and your vote, even if you've made the motion or the second. To our public participants, at any time during this meeting, you may enter any comments or questions via the chat function. At the appropriate time, they will be read into the record. The link and further instructions are located on the agenda. Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022 regarding COVID-19 allows for full public participation. Therefore, if you'd like to be heard on a specific hearing, let us know via the chat function. Then at the appropriate time, I'll call for public comment. When you are selected, you will be moved into the hearing as a participant. As such, you must have your video enabled, be succinct and respectful of others. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes each. Regarding RDAs, under a request for determination of applicability, the applicant is asking the commission to determine if the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and or the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw apply to their proposed project. A negative determination is that the provisions of the act and or the bylaw do not apply. Therefore, the project can proceed as proposed. However, a positive determination means that the provisions of the act and or the bylaw do in fact apply, and the project would require a notice of intent application. Therefore, as an applicant, you'll want to hear a negative determination. And for the benefit of anyone waiting for a particular hearing, and so that you're not waiting unnecessarily, the continued hearing for 0 Nashawena Street is expected to be continued. So first up on the agenda, I'm going to slip in other business. We have a new part-time agent. Her name is Emma Brooks. When you drop in the office here, welcome her to the team. Emma, if you're watching, welcome. All right, first up, vote minutes, January 11, 2023.
I move
Anybody?
the minutes. I move the minutes as written. Harlow Hawk.
Second, Gladfelter.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as submitted. Are there any questions or comments? All right, Betsy.
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney.
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Harlow Hawk's eye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted the minutes as submitted for January 11. Thank you, Kristen. Next up, the minutes of January 18, 2023.
I'll move to accept the minutes as written with any possible changes made by the members of the commission.
Harlow Hawk second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as submitted. Any questions or comments? All right, Betsy.
I wasn't there.
Okay. Courtney.
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Harlow Hawk's eye.
All right, with a quorum of 4, we have accepted the minutes as submitted. Thank you, Kristen. Next up, I'm going to read 2. We're only going to vote once. It's a request for a continuance under a notice of intent. Lucius and Wendy Hill, 0 Nashawina Street, map and parcel 24-20-001-000 and 24-20-002-000, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to conduct invasive species management and restoration. Mrs. Lincoln.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance on both projects until February 15th.
So moved, Harlow Hawks.
Gladfelter, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to continue this until February 15th. If there's no questions or comments, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Harlow Hawks, aye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until February 15th. Next up are requests for determination of applicability. First up, Marini, 39 Showa Drive, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to reinstall mitigation plantings in accordance with the order of conditions for Mass DEP number 25-2318. Ms. Bergeron.
Staff recommends a -3 under the state and a -2 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Harlow Hawks, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Any questions or comments? All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Harlow Hawks, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, A.W. Joyle Company, 65 Miami Avenue, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to remove an existing brick patio and a portion of the existing driveway and to construct a porch. Ms. Bergeron.
Staff recommends a -3 under the state and a -2 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Harlow Hawks, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Any questions or comments? All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Harlow Hawks, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Michael J. and Shelby C. Riley, 39 Hunt Street, North Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct a second-story addition and prune nearby trees. Ms. Bergeron.
Staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed, and this project is solely located in a flood zone.
Bird, so move.
Harlow Hawks, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Any questions or comments? All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Harlow Hawks, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Joseph F. Salvucci, 50 Rivers Edge Road, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to grade and add loam to the landward extent of the riverfront area buffer. Ms. Bergeron.
Staff recommends a -3 under the state and a -2 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Harlow Hawks, second.
All right. I sense a theme here. All right, if there's no questions or comments. Betsy.
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Harlow Hawks, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Department of Conservation and Recreation, Washburn Island, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to replace 3 existing restroom units with new modular and utility-free self-contained units in the same location. Ms. Bergeron.
Staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed, and these particular sites are located only in the flood zone.
Bird, so move.
Harlow Hawks, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. There's no questions or comments. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Arlo Hawks Eye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Elizabeth Witters, 60 Swing Lane, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to pump, fill, and abandon the existing failed cesspools and to install a new Title V sewage disposal system. Ms. Bergeron.
Staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed, and this is a flood zone only
Bird,
project.
Bird, so move.
Arlo Hawks second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Any questions or comments? All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Arlo Hawks Eye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Timothy Gordon, 3 Amherst Avenue, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to remove an existing deck and small patio, to construct an addition, a new deck, to install a new patio, and to reconfigure the existing fence. Ms. Bergeron.
Staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource areas are not confirmed, and the project is located in the flood zone.
Bird, so move.
Arlo Hawks second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. If there's no questions or comments. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Arlo Hawks Eye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Richard and Kylie A. Sealy, 39 Old Homestead Road, West Falmouth, Mass. For permission to install mitigation plantings in accordance to the order of conditions for Mass DEP number 25-2479. Ms. Bergeron.
Staff recommends a -3 under the state and a -2 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Arlo Hawks second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. There's no questions or comments. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Arlo Hawks Eye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation.
I have to recuse myself from the next RDA.
Okay. All right. Next up, Jennifer Greenman and Christopher White, 0 and number 10, Nashawena Street, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to create a landscape bed to repair and maintain an existing licensed seawall and to restore any disturbed areas of vegetation. For the record, Maury is recused. Ms. Bergeron.
Staff recommends a -3 under the state and a -2 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Gladfelter, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. If there's any questions or comments? All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
With the existing quorum, it is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, continued request for determination of applicability. Patricia, I'm sorry if I get this wrong, Falcucci, 239 Edgewater Drive East, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise, that is RAISE, lift up an existing structure to meet flood code and to construct a second-story carport and porch. Ms. Bergeron.
Staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed, and this project is solely located in a flood zone.
Bird, so move.
Arlo Hawks.
Gladfelter,
Ooh,
go on.
all right. We
Gladfelter,
have a
second.
We have a motion and multiple seconds to accept staff's recommendation. If there's no questions or comments. All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Carlo Hawks eye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Thank you, Alyssa, for the explanations and the thorough report. Next up, request for hearing under notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. As a reminder, public commenting is limited to 3 minutes. So I encourage you to stay within the purview of this board, which are the rules and regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw and how they pertain to a particular application. The chair reserves the right to stop any commenting that is disparaging or inconsequential to the hearing. First up, Enza Khan and Karen D. Burke, trustees, the 123 Penzance Road Nominee Trust, 123 Penzance Road, Falmouth, Mass. Excuse me, for permission to enlarge and chip seal the driveway, install drainage, and install mitigation plantings. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have Doug from Cape and Islands here to present his project. Doug, is it just you tonight for this one?
It is, yes.
Okay, perfect.
All right, sir, you're up.
Very good. Good evening. My name is Doug Schneider with Cape and Islands Engineering here on behalf of the owners of 123 Penzance. If I can share my screen, if that's possible, we can run through a few things really quickly.
Yes, sir.
Let's see. First up, we have just a locus map that gives you an idea where we are. We're off on Penzance. I've highlighted in red there the locus. So you can see, get an idea where we are. I want to change that. No. Can you see this screen with the
Nope,
close up
same
on
one.
it?
Same one.
Same one. Shoot. Let me stop sharing and share it again sometime, but let's see, I want this one. There we go. So 123 Penzance, older home, been in front of the commission numerous times over the years. The project in front of you involves the reconstruction and partial removal and rebuild of the driveway area that you see highlighted in green on the aerial here. Let's see if I can switch to another screen. Our site plan. So it's a rather large lot. We've got numerous resource areas. We've got Buzzards Bay, Coastal Beach, and Bank and Dune all on the west side. We've got a salt marsh area on the east side that's on the opposite side of Penzance Road. We've got a coastal bank area as well as coastal flood zone. And what we're looking to do is, if you can see the plan.
Yes.
Of the area is right now the driveway comes down from the house and garage area directly onto Penzance Road. We're looking to remove the area of the driveway that flows down to Penzance and expand a parking area up by the house install a catch basin for the runoff, install a 4-foot path in the general area of the existing driveway, and plant numerous plantings between Penzance Road and the driveway parking area, and then chip seal and the remaining driveway that goes from our expanded parking area that goes down to the south and back onto Penzance Road. So right now it's a loop driveway. We're going to eliminate the one access onto Penzance. And in that area that we're working, we have a 100-foot buffer zone from a salt marsh that's located on the east side of Penzance Road. We do have a coastal bank area between the road and the existing driveway, which puts off the Falmouth Zone A's and Zone B's. And part of the work of the new all of the work that's being removal of the driveway is in the Zone A, and a portion of the new paving area, which is, you can see what's being added is kind of shaded in a light gray, is within the A and within the B. We've got the planting mitigation area is well over the minimum required. And we'll be installing a limit of work along the north, the east, and the south side of the proposed work. And we think we're doing a nice improvement to what's there right now. We're removing some pavements. It's in the coastal bank buffer zone, A zones, and increasing the separations from the coast, from the salt marsh area across the street. I think we've got a nice improvement here, improving some of the drainage and the like, and that's it in a nutshell. And we're looking for a positive order conditions to move forward.
All right. All right, Doug, you can stop sharing now. Jen?
I don't have any comments or questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you,
All
Doug.
right. Ms. Bergeron?
I have nothing to add at this time. Thank you.
All right. All right, Commissioner comments, Betsy?
And I also have no comments or questions.
Courtney?
I don't either.
Wow. Is this good or bad? Kevin?
I'm agreeing with my previous colleagues.
All right. Maury?
No questions. Thank you.
Wow. All right. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
There's nothing in the public chat, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Doug must have done
Good.
something right today.
He gets the gold star.
Yeah.
All right. What do
Can you
guys
make a
think?
motion?
Please.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to close the hearing. If there's no other comments or questions, we're voting. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Hollow Hawks Eye.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Mr. Snyder.
Thank you very much.
Doug, are you on the next one or is that Raul?
Raul has the next one, I believe.
Okay,
I assume
great. Good night, Doug. Thank you.
Thank you. Night.
Night.
All right, next up, Joseph R. Shaker, Eldridge Drive 8 LLC, 8 Eldridge Drive, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to reconstruct the existing access stairs, conduct invasive species management. That was kind of a nondescriptor. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have Raul from Cape and Islands here to present his project.
Welcome, Mr. Lazardi.
Thank you. Good evening.
I'm sorry, Raul, I have somebody from Wilkinson. Am I promoting them up as well?
Please, I believe his name is Ian Peach.
Yep, Ian, and then I have a Shake 130. I'm assuming that's the property owner.
I believe that's Suzanne Shaker, the homeowner. Yes.
Okay, promote that Suzanne up as well.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, housekeeping is taken care of.
Good evening. For the record, Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering with Ian Peach from Wilkinson Ecological Design joining us. Also the homeowner, Mrs. Suzanne Shaker, applicants and homeowners of the property. This project, probably all of the board was part of the hearing last year for the reconstruction of the house. What the homeowners want to do is restore the bank and also reconstruct the stairs. The property is located at 8 Eldridge Drive in North Falmouth. It is along the shores of Megansett Harbor. The other resources are land under the ocean. Also understood that it's also land subject, land containing shellfish. There's a coastal beach, coastal banks, land subject to coastal stone flowage, which is also a velocity zone. And the coastal bank goes all the way to about elevation 26 from the shores and the beach area. The main project for the property now is to remove.
Could we see the plan?
I can share my screen. Yes. Screen 2. So the main project for this is the restoration of removal of invasives and land management for about 7,500 square feet of the property. That 7,500 square feet, half of it is probably the coastal bank, and the other half is about from the toe of the bank to the coastal beach. In addition to that, we're proposing to remove the existing stairs. The existing stairs are not safe. Currently, there's 21 steps, and the average rise between each step is about 10 inches in an overall drop of about 17 feet. So we're proposing to remove those stairs with a set of stairs that is more in keeping with the regulations today of 7.5 inches drop for every step. There's also proposed some tree removals and limbing of dead trees. There's a plan provided by Wilkinson Ecological, which was submitted with the application. They have a little detail showing the existing condition and the trees that are proposed to be removed, and also a detailed description of new plantings to take place within the restoration area. At the end of the proposed stairs, we're also proposing to relocate the existing footpath. We're also proposing to reduce the width of the footpath, which at the widest point is about 8 foot wide. What we're proposing is just for a 4 foot wide path from the end of the stairs to the edge of the beach. Some of the pictures that we submitted in the application show the area from the beach towards the stairs and up through the stairs to show the condition of the existing stairs. And there's a picture from the stairs looking down towards the beach. We did receive some comments from staff, in particular to the proposed plant species and some of the suggestion of replacing some of the species with other species and reducing the amount of some species. But to that, I would like to pass this presentation over to Ian from Wilkinson Ecological. He may have better understanding and feedback for the staff recommendations and comments. There was one comment from staff that there is a outhole on the beach. I was unaware of that outhole, but the applicant is willing to remove that outhole. It looks like it was fairly old, been in existence on the property for a long time, but the applicant is willing to remove it as recommended by staff. So with that, I would like to pass it on to Ian. Thanks.
Thank you, Raul. Would you mind sharing that restoration plan you had again, if you have it right there?
Yes.
Thank you very much. For the record, Ian Peach, from Wilkinson Ecological Design, representing the project tonight. And I just want to give a quick rundown, and then of course I can speak to any questions or concerns. So I want to start by reminding everybody that this is a voluntary ecological restoration project, and we really see it as a great opportunity to restore a severely degraded coastal bank and plant community. Japanese knotweed covers large swaths of the bank along with other state-listed invasive species. We have Asiatic bittersweet, shrub honeysuckle, and Phragmites down towards the bottom. So some of our most challenging invasive plants, a real upside for the restoration. Our goals primarily include the careful management and removal of the Japanese knotweed and all of the other state-listed invasive plants within the proposed project area. After that, as is typical to our work, we proposed a robust native plant restoration. This includes 114 native trees and shrubs, along with establishing that stabilizing native grass layer with the fibrous root system to protect that steep bank stability that you saw in the photograph and help infiltrate the stormwater, as well as diversify that ground layer habitat structure, which is important to have that stratification. We do have 2 trees leaning over the residence that are highlighted on the plan. They have a damaged canopy structure and are proposed for removal due to safety. There are also 4 other trees adjacent to those that are degraded, and we have them shown for removal. Because of this, we are offering a 1-to-1 replacement and proposing 4 scrub oak, a not overly represented species, which is really nice to get into restoration projects, in 2 eastern red cedars, which would be well suited to the site. So overall, the project really is an ideal candidate for ecological restoration, voluntary ecological restoration. We're starting with an existing condition that really is in need of that kind of work. And through that careful stewardship over the life of the order, we believe we'd be able to restore a native plant community as designed, and that comprises over 17 different species and will offer that enhanced benefit to stormwater infiltration and wildlife. So that's kind of the summary of our view as an ecological restoration project, and I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Thanks, Ian. Thank you, Raul. Ms. Shaker, you have anything you'd like to add at this point?
No, I think they've covered most of it, what our intentions are for the bluff.
All right. Jen.
Yes, Ian, can you address some of the questions and concerns we have in the staff report? Let's start with what's the percent invaded, in case I missed that.
Yeah, so we are at some of the most challenging invasive plants, but we're at about 50 to 60% is what our estimate is right now.
Okay.
Would you like me
And
to?
can you tell me where else and what other properties along this bluff do you find Carolina rose growing naturally?
So Carolina rose is selected because it's nice to have diversity of flower structure. So it's for the bigger pollinators. Also, they use it for actually gathering and nesting. And then things like potentilla is that small kind of specialist pollinator. So more or less what we try to do is use native plants to this location that have been kind of moved out of there by activities over time that we think are going to bring in the best ecosystem services. I don't have a census of that specific species in the area.
Okay, so when we're doing these restoration projects, they're tending to be quite rose heavy lately.
Okay.
So that's something where we'd like you to mimic the native communities that are adjacent to these sites, instead of trying to change them. So we do have some concerns with the amount of Carolina rose being used, as well as the sweet fern and the potentilla, because we just tend to think that those tend to be mowed a little bit more than they should. I see that you have the potentilla over by the staircase, which is fine. Where is your sweet ferns down on the bank? Is there a particular reason you have sweet fern located that far down the bank?
Not specifically. It's meant to kind of have those stratified layers. You know, we find if we just have like beach plum and bayberry, you're getting one stratification in terms of vegetative structure. So it's good to have things at 2 to 3 feet, 5 to 6 feet, and to cover all those stratifications vertically. Yeah. So I think it's mostly for stratification there.
Okay, and you say it's a 75 area, you're about 50% invaded.
Yes.
Even if we give you a larger spacing, you're looking at 3750 for your 50% invaded. It looks like you have a total of 107 shrubs in that area, and if we give you a 5-foot on center spacing, which we are allotting or allowing these voluntary restoration projects to be,
yeah,
we're still getting a plant count of between 150 and 173. So we do think you may be a little short on your planting, but we couldn't put that in the staff report because we didn't know what percent invaded you are.
Okay.
I just calculated that really quickly, so I'd like to see that plant list kind of beefed up a little bit.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll probably have to see a revision in the plan for that.
Yes.
And that's the only comments I have at this moment, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Ms. Bergeron?
Thank you. Just continuing with the staff report, and Ian, my apologies if I missed it. I think I had read in your narrative and description that there were some knotweed and Phragmites being removed. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I didn't get the best view when I was out there. Is it prudent to put in some kind of root barrier? Are these coming from neighboring properties, or are they sort of isolated?
This is the nexus. This is the,
okay.
So, and I will add specific, like with knotweed, I'll just speak to that, 20 to 30 feet even with an established in terms of depth, you know, so you're really, you're kind of putting in a disturbing structure. I think you have to kind of weigh that. And in sort of precedence, we really haven't used that kind of structure. There are the right place for that,
Sure.
but in terms of our restoration projects, we haven't really found that come to pass often.
Okay. And then it was noted that the existing path and stairway kind of widens as it gets to the beach, and you're reducing that. But in revegetating the path, there's only grasses proposed. So the board can discuss, but the staff would like to see some shrub material put back in there as well, just to give more solidification. That area probably sees some flooding now and again. So having some big root systems might be beneficial.
Okay. I think with the request for more plants, that might be a logical place. Our initial logic was based on existing plants. There's a nice panicum population, switchgrass right there, along with wing sumac, 2 plants that, you know, want to move horizontally, want to fill space. So we just didn't want kind of conflict. Wanted to give them a little bit of room, but I think there's a compromise there for sure.
Okay, perfect. Those were all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner comments. Courtney?
Are you planning to do any hand removal or much hand removal of these, or are you going to mostly use herbicides?
Yes, good question. Thank you. So knotweed is just really basically a necessity. It's typically an injection method, so it's very localized, and you know, and we're able to really control that method. So it's really our only choice with knotweed in this circumstance. The hand removal is in our protocol. You know, we always like to lean on that with the right species. So primarily with knotweed, it will have to be as proposed. With some of the other species, there is sometimes hand or, light mechanical removal of winching it up the bank. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, my concern is there's a trade-off. You use herbicide, of course, you're using the herbicide, but if you're not doing as much disturbing of the slope in the bank, and whereas you start digging around to pull the roots out, and there's no guarantee you get everything, it's more disturbing. How long do you figure it'll take you to really get things like this under control? And are you hesitant to plant before then?
Yep.
Or are you gonna plant? I mean, would seem to me you want to get rid of all of the nasty stuff before you plant.
Yeah, you're asking all the right questions here. So first of all, you're right. One of the reasons why herbicide is in the toolkit with restoration is we don't want to overly disturb soils, stir up seed bank, and you're just caught in a cycle of further erosion and a flush of other undesirable species. So that was one thing. As far as timeline, with knotweed especially, I mean, the life of the order, the 3 years, that's why we're often asking for ongoing conditions. It's definitely the full, it takes the full 3 years, and we look for 80% eradication is kind of the metric before we're willing to plant into it. At that realm, we are able to effectively work around the plants to manage the remnant populations.
Yeah, I mean, my concern is that if you don't get it all and now you plant the plantings that you really want to plant, now you're going to have to go back in and disturb them. So is there an approach to maybe planting this bank with plantings like various grasses and the like, that if you, for a while until you really get rid of the invasives, and then do your plantings you want to keep there? I mean,
yes. I think we're actually saying almost the same thing. We will establish that grass layer to stabilize, which is our, the specifiers, the grass mix, and we always wait. We're willing to be patient to not get into that situation where we're planting too soon, for the detriment of the newly planted native plants. Yeah.
I mean, I know it's a tough thing, but if you do it right, the end product is a vast improvement.
Totally.
You guys worked on a project with Chris Blanton a few years ago on Little Sipowith, so I know you do good work.
Thank you.
No other questions.
Thank you. Kevin?
No questions. I'm still a little lost with all of what's going to happen before this is finally done, but I'm comfortable that the intent is there. Thank you.
All right. Maury?
I just had a couple questions, more, and also just for the future. And I think I brought it up before. It would be really nice to have both plans equally consistent so that when we look at this, we know what size trees, because on the Wilkinson plan, they just show circles, no species or anything else. And it's hard to follow it on the Cape and Island plan because they're not the same. So that in the future, please do that. I think I've asked before, so I'm going to just ask again, and maybe staff could make sure they do that from now on. So that when it says, a 10-inch, like on Cape and Islands, it says a 10-inch tree. On the Wilkinson, it's just a circle, and you don't even know if it's really going to be cut down because there's not even an X through it on their plan. So I just think that needs to be consistent to help the board and for compliance at the end. It makes it a lot easier. That being said, is there a reason that what the 14-inch tree close to the edge of the bank is? I don't know what it is because not one plan tells you what it is. Is it a pine or?
The closest to the bank is an oak.
Yeah, the 10-inch oak. And then what's the 14-inch that has no name on it? Either that's being cut down. And why is the 10-inch oak being cut down?
So just to clarify, also on the Wilkinson plan in the existing conditions section, the trees to be removed have green X's on them. So if they don't have a green X, they're not being removed. We have the 2 that are leaning well over the house that I spoke to that are oaks, and we have the 4 adjacent or west of those in a cluster that are degraded oaks as well. So 6 total to the west of that where it says existing patio on the existing conditions. And then we have a dead black cherry overtopped by Asiatic bittersweet to the east, just over the crest of the topography of the bank.
Okay. So again, there's no size of the trees on the little one and actually on any of your plan. So we just need that. So we know when we ask you to replace things in DBH, we know.
Yes.
That it's 1 for 1. And especially when they're 10-inch oaks and 14-inch, I don't know what that one is, but whatever the 14-inch one is. And you say they're close to the house, but I think if I scale it, they are, I don't know, the 10-inch oak is 30 feet away. So I don't know why we're removing a 30-foot away oak that's within, I mean, almost at the top of the coastal bank.
Correct. Yeah. So the 2 I spoke to that are a hazard to the house actually have upper canopy leaning over the house. The 4 are not being removed because of risk to the structure. They're being removed because of their degraded canopy and health.
So the 10-inch, I guess it's an oak because the one that's
Yes.
closest to the coastal bank
Correct.
on the west side. I'm
Yes.
sorry, the east side. And then you're planting a cedar tree, I believe 2 cedars.
Correct.
2 to 5 gallon cedars. I don't think that's really appropriate. We're getting all of their trees are 2 to 5 gallon. And you know me, I'm a big fan of small on a coastal bank, but I'm not a big fan of small when it's up in the upland, basically on a flat area where you can dig a nice hole. So I think those need to be a little bit bigger, like maybe 2-inch or 3-inch caliper. And the other thing was I started scaling out all the plantings. And I know this is a volunteer thing, but that bank is heavily invaded with invasives. I mean, it's horrible. But it still holds that whole bank. And I'm looking at the spacing and some of these, you know, it's usually 2 gallon, 2 to 3 gallon, 3 to 5 foot on center. And some of these are like 10 foot, 12 foot on center. And I just think it needs to be more densely populated so that you don't get erosion more than anything. And I'm a big fan of smaller plants on the bank. Believe me, I'm not looking for big, huge. I mean, 5 gallon is even big for a coastal bank to be digging those holes if you want to properly plant with what you need for soils to amend. And those were my big questions. I think I had. And then, yeah, and that was it. I just think we need larger trees on the flat land, and I think we need more on the bank. And I think the restoration plan, it's going to be a tough project. Japanese knotweed, you couldn't pick more of the worst species to have to try and
Totally.
deal with.
Totally.
But thank you.
Yes. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, Betsy.
I have nothing further. Thanks.
All right. Same here. And is there anything in the public chat function, please?
Nothing in the public chat, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make one additional comment. That those trees that are now being proposed to be removed were actually proposed to be outside the limit of work, intentionally outside the limit of work, when the house was being constructed. And the 2 10-inch or one of the 10-inch, the 2 10-inch oaks that are proposing to be removed, when the house was approved, they were proposed to be limbed. So we have some photos of the trees with the house if the board would like to see. So that's all.
All right.
Ian, how much time do you think you might need to redo your plan?
I think these are logical revisions that we can get right to. So I'd assume the next cycle would be adequate if Raul agrees.
Our next cycle is March 1st.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
I wish
right.
I wish I could sneak in, but I just, the 15th, we're just jammed, so I can't.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
looking at the 1st. So all of our revisions need to be in a week prior, which would be the 22nd. The 22nd.
Understood. Thank you.
All right. Raul, you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so before I request a continuance, just to, as a recap, we're looking at densifying the number of shrubs, rethinking the size of the trees proposed in the flat top area. And I think those are the two bullets that I have, and maybe reshuffling some of the species so that we have some of the shrubby ones alongside or near the path, and not everything be grasses along the path. So I think these are the three notes that I have for revisions. If I missed something, please, if somebody can clear me up before I request for a continuance. Yes, Maury?
Wasn't there a reduction to kind of swap out some of the Carolina rose as well? So it's not predominant.
Yes, so there's 4 bullets. Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
with that, I would ask for a continuance. I believe March 1st is
At the
still available.
request- At the request of the applicant, we'll continue this to March 1st. Harlow Hawks.
Bird second.
All right. We have a motion and a second on the table to continue this until 3/1. It sounds like everything's clear what the expectations are. Is always good, makes it for us all more efficient. Betsy?
Yeah, I'd also like you to think about Maury's suggestion as to whether all those trees have to come down, given what you just said.
All right. Anything else? All right.
just
so
like
the
to,
mo-
oh, sorry, do you mind if I
Sure, no.
chime in just a
no,
little?
so-
Sorry, my husband couldn't be here, he's traveling, so we're excited for the project, and I know that it's been neglected for a while. And we understand it is a long process, but we're here to make it, the bluff better for the environment and I know it's a long process, but we're excited for the process I know that since it was neglected for so long, that it might take, a long time to get it to where it needs to be, but, we're here to, do whatever it takes to, make it safe and, environmentally, right in any way that they suggest. So thank you for your time.
And we appreciate your efforts, and I think you got fundamentally a solid plan in place, little tweaks, and
Yeah.
we'll be there.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right, again, the motion and second on the table is to continue this till March 1st. If there's nothing further, we'll vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Harlow Hawks eye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until March 1st. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
All right, next up, Logan Huffman, 29 Juniper Point Realty Trust, 29 Juniper Point Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to reconstruct an existing licensed pier. Ben?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be promoting Mike Borselli. I'm just trying to get over there. I'm coming, Mike. Where did Mike go? There's Courtney. So I've just promoted Mike Borselli up to present his project, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening, Mr. Borselli. You're up, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant Logan Huffman. With your permission, I'd like to share my screen, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Huffman owns the property at 29 Juniper Point Road. If you've been to the site, you may have noticed that the previously existing house shown on this plan and the garage, I believe, have been demolished and making way for a new house construction that was issued an order of conditions, and I believe construction is underway or soon to be underway. But the focus of this application is a request for permission to reconstruct an existing fixed pier that is fully licensed on the waters of Great Harbor. This property has frontage on Great Harbor, which is overlooks Woods Hole Passage. It's just south of the Steamship Authority terminal. This existing timber dock has a Chapter 91 license that's referenced on the plan as license number 243. It was included in the application package. It was issued in 1977. And this structure is starting to get into an unsafe state of disrepair, and it needs to be fixed. And so the applicant is proposing basically to replace it in kind by removing the existing timber dock and pilings and ramp connection, and then reinstalling the same number of piles, 6 10-inch diameter piles in the same location, and then rebuilding the fixed pier to the same size 8 by 20 with the same size 4 by 13.5 connecting ramp. This is actually smaller than what the license allowed, but that was what was constructed. It's what shows on every aerial photo that I can see. And there's really not much else to say about the project other than the piles will be driven by barge. The water depths are shown. The barge would be off in the deeper water, and we would certainly expect a condition that the barge should float at all tides. There's a typical cross section of the pier. This is the same exact dimensions as what was in the Chapter 91 license. And that sums it up. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Jen?
I don't have any questions. Mike, you've clarified everything with Division of Marine Fisheries, right?
Yes, they
Yep,
had,
I
they
saw
had
that.
mistaken it for another property.
Okay, perfect. I have no comments or questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Ms. Bergeron?
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
All right. Mike, this is all non-CCA treated lumber, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
I think I saw a note somewhere, but I just figured it'd be easy to ask you.
Yes.
Right. Thank you. All right, Kevin.
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Maury.
Jen, is there a time of year restriction at all here?
No.
Okay, and no eelgrass? Okay. And then the last question, Mike, the one groin that doesn't have a license number on it, is that licensed? Because everything else has a number on it.
Let's reshare this. The groin.
The little teeny one.
Oh, the little teeny one. That's a
Yeah.
good question. I don't know. I never even, frankly, thought about it or noticed it. So I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, not a big deal. I'm just curious because
Yeah.
everything, you did such a good job labeling everything. I
Yeah,
had to find something.
that wasn't on the license plan that I looked at. Actually, I have that license plan. And I don't believe it shows. I'll be very brief. I'll share it one more time. Here's the license itself. The plan is rotated, and I'll rotate it so you can see it better. And that small groin would be over here somewhere. It doesn't show on this license plan, so it's not under this license.
Okay. If
So-
you find it, just put it on the plan.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah, for sure.
Maura, just to clarify, there's no time of year restriction, but is an actual daily restriction. It's 2 hours. 2 hours before and after high tide because of the eelgrass. So there is eelgrass.
There
in
is
the
the old
area.
grass, okay.
Okay,
There's mapped eelgrass. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
none right in this area. Yeah.
so we'll just put that condition in.
Thank you.
Okay,
And I guess that's to make sure, to help mitigate against the barge grounding out.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That's all, thank you.
All right, Betsy,
No questions, thanks.
all right. Courtney,
No questions.
all right. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
Nothing in the public chat, Mr. Chairman.
All right. All right, what are you thinking?
I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. If there's no other comments or questions, there's nothing in the public chat function, we're voting. Yeah, and this is to close the hearing. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, eye.
it is unanimous. We have closed the hearing. Thank you, Mr. Borselli.
Thank you.
All right, next up, Stephen Dempsey, 396 Ecopesket Road, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to install a set of timber stairs over an existing stone revetment.
Mr. Chairman, this is me again.
It is you again. Welcome back. You're up, sir.
Again, permission to share my screen. Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, represent Mr. Dempsey. The applicant owns the property at number 396 Acapesket Road. It has water frontage on Green Pond. It has a typical residence with driveway. There's a shed on the property. On the waterfront on Green Pond, we have land under the ocean, land containing shellfish. There's a coastal beach at the base of the revetment. And the revetment basically makes it impossible to gain access to the lower level from the upper level. The elevations at the top of the bank are about elevation 12, and on down at the beach, it's close to 0. So there's no way to access the water safely over the revetment. There has been some allowance for my client to utilize the dock next door, but he does not have rights to that dock. So he's concerned that he may not have, in those rights to that dock, allowed him to walk down these stairs down to the beach. So he's concerned that he may lose neighborly rights to do that, and he wanted to get permission to get safe access over the riprap wall. So we've designed a stairway, and there's a cross profile, I guess, of this over the revetment. We're showing it with a small platform at the top that would be fixed to a sonotube foundation, and then there'd be timber stairway with railings just bridging over at the top of the stones for the riprap. And where there are opportunities with the posts would be fastened to the stones by drilling and installing stainless steel fasteners into the stones where appropriate. And then at the top, there would be a 4x4 post hand dug in. And at the bottom, there'd be a 4x4 post that would be hand augered into the beach. This would allow him safe access over the riprap down to the beach level. And, you know, he may launch I don't know if he has a mooring, but he's on a mooring list that might give him an opportunity to push his Zodiac into the water, fish from the beach, or gain access to the water for recreational purposes. And that sums it up. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Jen,
I don't have any comments.
all righty. Ms. Bergeron?
Nor do I. Thank you.
Kevin, you have to come up with a bunch of stuff. Confuse them all.
Sorry, no comments, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Maury?
No comments, except I'm glad you found the lot with the least amount of vegetation to put that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Betsy?
No comments.
Courtney?
You're muted, Courtney.
Maybe we shouldn't tell them that.
Silence is golden, no question.
Sorry, Jamie.
I proposed those
Yeah.
stainless steel fasteners for you, Courtney. So
Should have called it out. All right,
Yeah,
I'll
I
break the
did.
cycle. Again, Mike, this is non-CCA, correct?
correct.
Actually, I do have a question, Jamie.
Well,
I have a question for Mike. Sorry, Mike.
No problem.
So what's the tidal range here?
1.5.
It's about 15 inches.
So is part of the time the dock the lower part gonna be underwater?
Yes.
Okay,
The first step. I can show you on the cross section if you want.
no, that's okay. That was my question and you gave a nice succinct answer.
Yep.
I make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
And I'll second.
all right, hold that thought. Jen, do we have anything in the public chat function, please?
There's nothing in the public chat function, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. We have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Are there any other comments or questions? All right. Since there are none, we're voting. This is to close the hearing. Betsy,
Filter eye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Carlo Hawkseye.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Again, thank you, Mr. Borselli.
Thank you. Thank you all. And have a nice evening and stay warm this weekend.
Good night, Mike.
Good night.
Night, Mike.
All right. The next two have been previously continued. Brings us to continued requests for hearing under notice of intent. Russell Agruza, 79 Meadow Neck Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct 2 additions, enlarge the existing deck, and install mitigation plantings. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am promoting Jack Landers Colley up and Bob Ament up to present their project.
All right.
Hi,
Good
Bob.
evening. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Hi, Jack. We
Yeah.
can hear you.
Good. For the record, my
I
name-
don't see you yet.
And pardon me?
I don't see you.
Okay, you don't see me. There you go. Are we all set?
We see you
Yes,
now,
sir.
Jack.
Okay,
You're
good
up.
evening. For the record, my name is Jack Landers Call. I'm a civil engineer in private practice. And I've been retained by Mr. Agruza to prepare the plans that are before you this evening. Having said that, I see that Bob Ament, he's the attorney representing the same, Mr. Agruza is here this evening. This is a continued hearing. I am going to, with your permission, hopefully try to share the screen. I've had troubles in the past, but I'd like to try it.
Please do.
So, do you see the image of of the lot?
Oh, yeah.
You can or cannot see it?
We cannot.
We cannot. Hold on. I hope I didn't lose you.
Oh.
I am not certain why you cannot see it. I've had this problem in the past. With your, let's see.
Hang
share.
on, Jack. I'm trying to find it so I can share it for you.
Right, it's job 3350, if that makes a difference, or you may have it under the client's name.
I don't have it under your project number, Jack. I have it under, the last revision was January 17th, 2023,
Exactly.
correct?
That is correct.
All right, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen for Jack.
Please. Thank you.
Everybody see that?
Yes.
Thank you, Jen.
Not a problem, Jack. Here, let me.
This project was presented before you some time ago. At that presentation, there were some concerns raised by the staff, one and several questions by the commission. They had to do with clarification of the proposed increase in structures in the velocity zone, the what we were going to do with the landscape ties to the south side of the building where the cursor is right now, the number and type of plants to be planted in the dedicated mitigation area, and last but not least, what we wanted to do with the patio on the north side of the house. Let me take them one by one, ending with the patio. I think it's safe to say that the staff and I agree on the planting scheme. We took their recommendations and basically followed them. The railroad ties, we are going to remove, and that's going to be planted and graded with Falmouth friendly lawn. And then to the north side of the house, we have a proposed addition, which is what precipitates why we have to propose the mitigation planting, as well as the decks on the south side and the garage on the south side. And lastly, the patio. Our client to this end would still like to keep the patio if at all possible. It's one of the few places that they actually have on the ground that they can utilize. Everything else you see on this plan is basically at first floor level, and because of the grade of the property, we have a deck in the back, we have stairs that go to the deck, and it's really the only spot that's not in the front of the house that they would like to use that is at ground level. So we are appealing that we'd like to get relief from that. Having said that, we also show a proposed footpath coming from the existing stairs and the proposed addition heading to the existing pathway. As a minimum, we would like to maintain that path, and if we have to remove the patio area. We would then, if you don't approve approval of the patio, propose to do likewise Falmouth friendly lawn in that area. So that is what we have this evening. I'd like to receive your comments, and I'm sure Mr. Ahmet will have some comments as well.
Thank you, Jack. Bob Ament here, attorney for Mr. Agrusa. And mainly, I just want to talk about the patio, but I also want to thank the staff because we've gotten to a point where this project works for Mr. Agrusa and appears to be approvable. The patio existed when the Agrusas bought the property 20 years ago. They think, after talking with the daughter of the previous owner who built the house or bought the house in 1988, that the patio was original. But they don't have aerial photographs that show that. The daughter was a child at the time. She's looked for photos showing that deck, but we don't have the proof that you'd want to have that it was there when the certificate of compliance was issued for the order of conditions that was issued in 1988, and the certificate of compliance was issued in 1989. But the original order of conditions approved 1,000 feet of lawn, and none of that was installed. The Agrusas have never installed any lawn. We think that the 256-foot patio, some of which would end up being a path into the woods anyway to connect to the existing path, was in substitution for that. Although we have no proof in the Conservation Commission files. Again, we don't have the proof, but we know it was there for a very long time. These are bricks that are laid in sand. As Mr. Agrusa said to me, right now the small brick patio requires no disturbance and uses sand for natural drainage. He just thinks it's environmentally a perfectly good thing to keep. So we hope that you might allow it to be remain, keeping in mind that 1,000 square feet of lawn was approved and not installed. Thanks.
Thank you. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I mean, we didn't have any comments, but that was based on the plan that was submitted, which told us the patio was going to be removed. So, like we said before, the patio should most likely be mitigated for. I'm attempting to find the compliance report for the property. So if you wanted to go along with the commissioners, let me see what I can find.
Okay, but just to be clear though, the proposal is to remove the patio?
No, the plan
Don't
says.
interrupt me, please.
The plan shows the removal of the patio. We would originally it did not. We would like to ask the commission to allow the patio to remain. We can obviously submit a revised plan, or that can just be a condition.
Just asking.
And we understand the problem with this request. You know, we understand what we've looked for aerial photographs, but it's pretty hard in treat areas to, you know, find that kind of detail and to know whether it was there in an exact year in the 1980s when the certificate of compliance was issued. I mean, we don't have that. We understand that. But we do know that 1,000 square feet of lawn was approved and not installed, and instead we have this much smaller brick patio.
I do have the plan, Mr. Chairman. From the prior agent that has some notes on it for when compliance was granted. And at that time, they identified 3 areas where they didn't feel the property or had questions about the property. And they never mentioned the patio at that time. So I don't believe the patio was there at compliance because everything else was mentioned on this plan by the prior agent and the patio was not.
Okay, so, but they're requesting that the patio be allowed to remain. And if I heard your comment a minute ago, Jen, you said that it should be mitigated for if it was allowed to remain.
Correct. I think that staff's original stance when patio was originally proposed to to remain was that it probably should have some mitigation attached to it.
I
That
guess
said, then this latest plan was submitted with clearly saying the patio was going to be removed. So that's how we crafted the staff report. And now we just heard at the hearing that the applicant would like to keep the patio.
If the board
So,
doesn't, if the
yeah.
commission
Just
will
jump
not
right in.
allow it, we understand that. We don't have room for other mitigation. The only other choice would be to remove the patio and put a family-friendly lawn there. But there is area that was never developed and remained natural because 1,000 square feet of lawn was not installed originally.
Ms. Bergeron.
I guess just a quick comment based on this conversation, Bob. I'm not sure if you have the order in front of you. Was this lawn allowed on the seaward side of the house?
It's simply, let me read it to you. I do have it. No, we're not on the seaward side. It simply says, limit lawn to 1,000 square feet on the street side. But the street side is in jurisdiction as well.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
All right, then we'll circle back. Commissioner comments, Betsy.
So the first question I have.
Courtney,
sorry.
your name is not Betsy.
All right, I misheard you. My apologies. I gotta change my name.
All right.
Do I have the floor?
Yes, you
Jamie?
do.
Thank you. I just find it, I mean, we can deal with whether it should have mitigation or what kind of mitigation, but I just find it really confusing when we're presented a plan and then you come for the meeting and ask for something different than is on the plan. But
Well, it's a pretty straightforward request, Betsy, and it's really, is it lawn or is it patio?
No, it's what we see on the plan. Betsy, go ahead.
yeah, no, I just wanted to make that comment.
And I acknowledge the problem.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's my burden. Our client has been very mobile. He's throughout the country and the world. There was a communication breakdown in that regard, and we submitted the plan because I wanted to make sure it was submitted in a timely manner. So the burden's really on me in that regards, and I do apologize to the staff and the committee to that end.
Thank you. Continuing with commissioner comments, Mr. Byrd.
First of all, what's the area of the patio?
256 square feet.
256. And do we have any, and this is directed toward staff or whoever wants to answer it. What is the earliest aerial we have that shows this patio?
Give me a second, Courtney, and I'll find out for you.
It's clear that it was not there when the compliance occurred.
It doesn't appear to be. They've made notes on all the other deviations on the property. There were 3 areas that they called out on their compliance with photos, and the patio was not one of them.
Yep.
So I can't say for sure, but I can say they called out other
Right,
deviations from the plan.
So you understand, I'm just curious to know what the earliest this thing appeared.
Give me a sec, Courtney.
Or is it covered by trees?
Been a while since I looked at the aerials, Courtney, so give me a chance. I'm almost there.
I've looked at the aerials that we could find and I could never find it because of the trees. And again, I don't know if the patio was there when the compliance was issued. It may have not been mentioned because it had been agreed that it could be there instead of the lawn. That's pure conjecture.
I think it's important to note that we did make every effort to try to find mitigation. This is a large parcel of land. We walked the entire parcel. And I can tell you, we were at the point where we wished we could find something to mitigate, but we simply couldn't. So we did take that into serious consideration. The client did expend an awful lot of effort via us to try to basically mitigate. We just simply couldn't. Otherwise, we would be.
So Dan, this may just come down to deliberations, whether it can be allowed or not.
While Jen is looking, we can move this on. I'm just ambivalent about the patio. Other than that, I don't have a problem with the project.
Okay, we'll circle back to that then. All right, Kevin?
Be honest, I really don't have a problem with patio.
Okay. Maury?
I tried hard to look at the aerial. And I see two things sitting next to the house. I don't know if they're chairs or chaise lounges or, but anyway, I'd like to discuss this in deliberation. Anyway, thank you.
All right. All right.
It's hard to say, Courtney. There's a lot of trees. I'm looking at 15. I can tell you a couple of things. I can tell you that compliance was granted in 89, or the compliance went out there in 89 to look for the patio. I can also show you that the 1995 aerial, this is the house. It appears to be vegetated, but I don't know up in this area. And this is from the 1990s. This is from 2005.
Yeah.
So it's
Jack, to your
difficult to
knowledge,
see when
Mr.
it
Abruzzi
first
did not
shows
put
up.
this patio in?
What was that, Mr. Chairman? I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I jumped in. I thought you were done. My fault. Go ahead.
No, you were saying, you asked me a question?
Well, my question was, you said the last photograph was 2005. Did I hear that right? Okay, so Jack, your client did not put this patio in. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Sorry, Jen. Go ahead.
No worries.
All right. So, I mean, this is 4 acres of land. So, I don't know. I kind of agree with Kevin. I don't really have a problem with the patio. I just have a problem with the process. It's just, I don't want to belabor it, but, sending in an application for one thing and then coming to the meeting with something else, as minuscule as it may be. I mean, you can see it's the biggest debate. So,
Yeah.
moving on from that, Jen and Alyssa, has everything else been addressed and why this was continued to begin with?
I think everything has been addressed. The only outstanding issue is the patio.
Again, which we can take into deliberations. Okay, Alyssa? I didn't know if you had anything.
I just had one comment, and not to throw another option in the mix, but the conversation so far has been either the patio can remain, it can remain with mitigation, or it would need to be removed. Just out of curiosity, is the homeowner willing to reduce the patio and mitigate in that then open space? If mitigation did become required? required? Just, it's okay if you don't have an answer.
I don't know
Um,
how to answer because some of the patio areas, the logical or the way you would get to the path in the woods, in fact, a good portion of it, about a third, as Jack's plan shows. So that would, be a path in any case.
Okay.
I'll put it this way. The plan shows the removal of the patio. If that's what we have to do, the client will do that. And that's why I went forward with it, but thinking we would see if the board would take the client's point of view into consideration. If it's removed some of the patio and keep some of it, well, from an environmental point of view, given the nature of the patio, given, again, the fact that this lawn was never, 1,000 square feet was never installed. It sounds as if members of the commission are leaning towards letting it stay the way it is. Getting over the frustration I understand and apologize for with that the plan shows it to be removed and now we're saying, well, could we keep it? I just don't think it makes a difference, should make a difference whether it's 256 feet or remove 100 square feet of it and keep 100 and have a path through it. I appreciate the thought about it, sort of a compromise, but hopefully they'll see fit to let us keep it.
Thank you.
Courtney?
My suggestion would be that the applicant asks for a continuance. If he wants, go back, figure out how to make the patio work or some portion of it and come back with a mitigation plan. And if he doesn't want to do that, we'll close the hearing.
All right, you've been vetoed by 3 votes so far, so.
I'm going to make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second, O'Brien.
All right. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to ask, but I'm going to beg you not to be repetitive or just don't be repetitive. Are there any more comments from the applicants? Jack or Bob?
None.
None. I appreciate everything you've done on this.
Thank you. All right, again, with the commissioners, any more comments or questions? All right, I don't see any. So we have a motion and a second on the table to close the hearing. If there's nothing further, we're going to vote on the closing the hearing. Betsy?
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Hello, Hawks Eye.
It is unanimous. We have closed the hearing. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. I
you
just,
and
can I make
understanding.
one statement, Mr. Chairman? Bob and Jack, in the future, please, I know you're working for your clients, but we received this plan on the 30th. It's the 1st. And it's already changed. It's difficult for the staff to respond to requests at a hearing. And it's really honestly not fair to the commission after all the review they've done with this to come to a hearing and change it at the 11th
I thought
hour.
that, Jen, I thought that this was filed a week before this hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have it listed as the 30th. It could have just been, we put it in at the 30th, but still, even if it was a week before the hearing, then we shouldn't be coming to the hearing saying we want to change the plan.
No, I understand.
No, I
I
understand
understand
that
the
as well.
problem.
Okay, thank you. I
Okay.
just don't want it to become a habit.
Oh, absolutely not. Thank you.
Okay, excellent.
All
Thank
right.
you, gentlemen.
Thank you again.
Moving forward, requests for an extension. John and Mary Ellen 41, Mary Manual Way, Falmouth, Mass. Request for 1-year extension.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we recommend a 1-year extension on this.
And the
So
reason,
moved.
second reason,
Oh, hang on, let me get,
All right.
pulling up
I'm
the.
sorry, who made the motion?
I did.
I second.
I think I can answer that, Jen.
I know, I'm trying to find my letter. I have it downloaded and I'm just trying to find it. Hang on, I didn't have it open. Sorry about that. It just says that they requested for 1 year, new property owners. I think this is the one we recently saw an amendment as well to the plan. Unfortunately, this plan was not granted the tolling for the 462 days from the pandemic. So I don't see any reason why we wouldn't allow a 1-year extension.
So we have a motion and a second on the table to grant 1-year extension. Are there any other questions or comments? All right, we're voting on the 1-year extension. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Third eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carla Hawks eye.
It is unanimous. We have granted a 1-year extension. Next up, Neil and Betty Watanabe, 8 Bridge Street, East Falmouth, Mass. Request for 1-year extension.
Again, they're requesting a 1-year extension. This order of conditions doesn't expire for a few more months, but they're obviously they anticipate not being able to finish the work in time. So they are requesting a 1-year extension. And again, I see no reason not to grant it.
Bird, so move.
Carla Hawks.
Gladfelter, second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to grant a 1-year extension. Any questions or comments? All right, we're voting to grant the 1-year extension. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Third eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carla Hawks eye.
It is unanimous. We have granted a 1-year extension. Next up, request for a certificate of compliance. Barry Beater and Eileen O'Connell, 286 Edgewater Drive East, East Falmouth, Mass. Request for a certificate of compliance for Mass DEP number 25-3842. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am promoting Mr. Beater, the property owner, for the board. I'm going to let Ms. Bergeron take the lead on this since she's done a lot of work on this.
All right, Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so this is a request for a certificate of compliance brought to the board. I have sent over a staff report for you all, as well as 2 of the relevant plans. I will send additional materials tomorrow. I thought that that would be sufficient for the evening. The homeowners are requesting compliance on a plan for their 2012 notice of intent. That notice of intent was for an addition for mitigation, a septic upgrade, as well as the reinstallation of mitigation from a previous order of conditions. That was no longer present on site when this notice of intent was occurring. As you see in the staff report, we've been working with the Beaters for a couple of years now to try to get them compliance on their property. There is a lack of an as-built plan for the first 2 requests of compliance, which the staff really wanted to compare to what was approved at the time the order was granted. Also, there was a bit of a struggle in keeping some of the mitigation alive, so that in staff's mind was another reason for non-compliance during those first 2 requests. We have met with the Beaters recently, as well as their representatives at Jack Landers Colley's office. And when we went out to the property, it looks like there are 2 areas in which the mitigation is still lacking. We do have that as-built plan, which, as I said, was sent over to you via email. The 2 areas in question, one of them, the Beaters have informed us the vegetation is having a hard time growing due to the sun and soil conditions over there. And then there's a second section that looks like it just wasn't planted for whatever reason in accordance with the planting plan that was approved. So for those reasons, staff tries to approve projects based on what was approved, and it was a little outside of our scope of work to approve that administratively. So we wanted to bring this to the commission. As we would typically do, it was our hope as staff that the homeowners could make a few comments. The commission could continue the hearing to go out to the site, take the plans that were submitted, look at it for yourselves, and see what you would require in order to have the beaters granted compliance. I think that's it.
Mr. Beater, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Liza and Jen, for coming out and helping to guide us toward completion, because that's our goal, is to get our property in compliance. The only question that we have is we've been trying for a long time. There's a little patch of area next to our garden shed that I guess was slated for planting, and we've tried multiple times. And because of the sun and the heat that sits on the area where we live, we've had trouble keeping anything alive. And it's probably a sand dune patch of land. So we'd like to maybe see if we can transfer some of the plants to another area and replant somewhere else on the property. There's not a lot of room left, but there is one area where we definitely, I guess, need some plants. And in the past, we weren't aware that we needed them there. We were over the top with the bayberries and the beach plums, and we thought we were totally in compliance and had more than enough plantings in areas. And so Jack Landers' colleagues group came out and they did a kind of a compared. They did photos and we thought we were all set. But I guess there's some more to do, and we're willing to do it as soon as we can move forward with it and continue to plant. And
all right. Thank you. All right, so Jen.
I would just say to Alyssa's point and to the Beater's point, there is an area closer to the salt marsh if you're looking at the water. Mr. Beater, Mrs. Beater, remember where you sort of have the kayak rack thing? Yeah. Remember we said maybe put some plantings in there? Yeah. The area by the garden shed, I think Alyssa and I are in agreement. It's a really exposed, tough area to get anything to survive there. There was some low bush blueberry proposed for that area on the original planting plan that Jack Landers Colley Jack Ficcaro had put together. Excuse me, wrong Jack. So staff would be agreeable that if the area near the salt marsh again, if you're looking at the water, your back is to the house, the area to the lower right along the path down to the marsh, if that was robustly planted, I think that staff would be agreeable to grant compliance without having the low bush blueberry up by the garden shed, because I just don't think they're going to take.
Is that all that you think needs to be done?
Alyssa, I think that's what we identified on the site.
Yes, in terms of the plantings, I think Jen and I agreed that if that area was made to look more like the previously approved plan, then we would be reaching compliance. There is a few non-compliant aspects on the property that I believe the Beaters have already taken care of. They've moved that kayak rack further upland, and they did have a dock structure that was unpermitted, so that has also been removed, or at least is in the process of being removed.
Gone. Totally
Perfect. Gone. And then there was a few components of the order of conditions that were unaddressed. One was monitoring reports and one was a single rail fence. They do have sort of a cobble edging at the moment, so I'd like the board to take a look at that and see if you think that's sufficient to serve the purpose as a barrier between the mitigation area and the upland. But I believe those were our only points.
How much square footage are we talking?
I don't think we have a number. We could try to devise one, maybe take some measurements. But I don't
Well, it
think
should
we
be obvious
achieved.
when we look at it, correct?
It'll be
believe
obvious when you
so.
go on site. If you look at Jack Vaccaro's plan and bring Jack Vaccaro's plan with you, and Alyssa, did you send Vaccaro's plan over, or are you gonna do that tomorrow?
I did, and I'll send a
She
little
sent it.
more information.
If you look
Um,
at Jack Vaccaro's plan, it's very obvious where it should be planted.
Also, Ms. Beater, we didn't mean to cut you off. It's kind of hard to hear you for some reason. I think it's the angle of the mic, but I think
There
you
you
said the single rail fence was, yes, to prevent mowing, just to let that area grow. If they're beyond the point of mowing. Okay.
All right, but even compliance couldn't be issued until this was planted anyway, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Commissioner comments? Anything? All right. So we'd be looking to continue this, correct? So that we have the opportunity to go look at it and then we'll revisit it.
Correct. I would continue it out to March 1st, Mr. Chairman, unless you want to continue it to next week. If everybody can get out there next week, February 8th, we can accommodate this discussion. If not, it'll have to be moved to March 1st.
There's no rush on this from our end.
All right, let's do March 1st, if you don't mind.
Okay.
I mean, if I mean, nobody can plant it next couple of weeks anyway, so.
No, that's fine.
So at the request of the applicant, I move that this is continued to March 1st.
Bird second.
And just for the Beaters acknowledgement, Mr. and Mrs. Beater, what's going to happen now is the board's going to come out and look at the site. So you will be seeing the board members come out. You'll have the opportunity to talk with them and show them your area. And they're going to be going out to the property in the next couple of weeks to evaluate it on their own, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
But don't feel obligated to stick around and wait for us.
No, we won't.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to continue this till March 1st. If there's nothing further. All right, we're voting on the continuance. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
All right, Courtney?
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Arlo Hawk's eye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until March 1st. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Beater.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Oh, actually,
All right,
no, you don't.
next up. Vote orders of conditions, Les Gersnoskas and Laura Tenney, 69 Paola Drive.
Is this the deck that's a little bit bigger than it was supposed to be?
Yes, I was not at this hearing. I think this is when I was ill, so let me pull it out real quick. Yeah, I think this is that little deck overhang. And nobody had any issues with the deck overhang, so they've added additional mitigation, it looks like, on the plan.
Am I on this quorum, Jamie?
What I have,
No, Betsy.
no, you're not.
It's Jamie,
Quorum is all, but it
Kevin,
was continued.
Courtney, and Maury.
Okay.
Did I miss anything, Alyssa? It was just the deck overhang and the mitigation?
Yes, and I believe that some of the commission ventured an opinion that they were okay with the overhang the way it was. There, I do have a note that someone was looking for more than 2 mitigation plants to be added to the plan. And those were my only notes.
I'll speak to the overhang in my opinion. Because it's second floor and it's 3 inches closer in one spot, actually 3 inches closer in both points. That, I mean, we don't want to make a habit of this, but a second floor, it's, what's the term, de minimis, in my opinion. The other note I had is showing the future mitigation area if the grass pavers, the grass area fails.
Oh, yeah, that was it with the car thing. I would just caution the board, Jamie. I understand what you're saying about de minimis, but I'm just gonna throw this out here because I'm super protective of the board. Just be careful when you're making statements like de minimis and it's an overhang and it's the second floor and you're not concerned with it, because I do remember the time where we had these massive cantilever decks with these steel beams and everything else, and everybody's like, oh, it's second floor, it's not going to make any difference. So just be cautious when you're looking at things like this. That's all.
Yeah,
because
my
you don't
intent
want
was
that
simply to-
incremental creep. The next thing you know, we have these steel beam cantilever decks everywhere. So that's all.
Allow it.
okay. I'm not getting any sound. Can you hear?
We can hear you, Courtney.
Okay. No, I agree with you, Jen. We do have to be careful about that stuff. But it strikes me that this, building one of these houses and so forth, it's a kind of a trim detail more than, an intentional pushing the thing out. It's that you're trimming out a structure. So it really is a minimal thing. I agree with Jamie in this situation. I think we need to be very
I think he's frozen. Wait till Saturday. We're all going to be frozen. Hey. All right. So I don't know. Have anything they want to see in there? Do you have a problem with anything?
You're gonna have a problem if Courtney doesn't come back.
Yeah. Maury?
One question, what was the amount of plantings that they would have to do?
Alyssa, you want to take that one? I'm going to try to get Courtney back.
Maury, is this in regards to the mitigation that's now necessary because of the increase in overhang, or you mean like in general?
Correct.
Okay. Let me just see here.
I can't remember. I know that Melissa was.
Yes, so there is a 28 square foot increase, but because they were reducing the driveway, they had a net decrease initially. So now there's a net increase of 5 square feet, which is why they were proposing only 2 more mitigation plantings. If that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Okay.
And I know that they have an area set aside if the driveway fails. And that's why they're getting the sort of the credit, because they're taking out the impervious, and then they're gonna, hopefully the driveway doesn't fail. I feel it should be kind of separated. I mean, that was a whole different request, was the driveway being put in with the pavers and that they could reduce their mitigation, but the overhang, which the word de minimis, I haven't heard that for a long time because we hated it so much. That the amount of area of that overhang should be 3 to 1. So if it's, I don't know how many square feet it is, it's, obviously if it's 6-inch overhang over 28 feet, you could do the math and just say that that's how much extra planting for that overhang. And at least it is more palatable that if it was on the ground, would it make them do that? And I know it's.
I think that was allowed for, wasn't it? Wasn't that in the 20-something square feet, Alyssa?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Wasn't that allowed for in that, when he calculated the 20-something square feet?
I believe so. I think to Maury's point, though the aspects of this proposal are in very different realms, I believe the point of the amended order was they were in the process of addressing compliance issues. So they were coming back trying to reduce their increases in square footage and address those changes. So I think the driveway and the overhang were the two big increases. I think they adequately found a way to reduce the driveway and without reconstructing the deck. I think that's how they came up with the big calculation, including
Right.
everything together. Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
All right. Anything else? Courtney, we lost you there for a minute. Do you have anything else?
No,
Okay. So what are you thinking, folks?
well, I'll move to issue an order of condition as discussed. I just want to make sure we're clear about mitigation for the overhang or not. And that's all. If I dropped out during that discussion, I'll just let that go and just say as discussed.
No, but to your point, we did discuss that and it was calculated for, so it has been addressed,
Okay,
you know.
so as discussed.
Harlow Hawk second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions as discussed. Is there anything else that I missed? All right, we're voting on the order of conditions then. Courtney?
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Harlow Hawk's eye.
All right, it is unanimous with the quorum we have. We have issued an order of conditions. Thank you. A little point, that was kind of confusing. All right, last motion, folks.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Gladfelter, aye.
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye.
O'Brien, aye.
Harlow Hawk's eye.
It is unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, all.
Everybody,
Thank you.
Guys.